All right, so today we're really diving deep into a fascinating topic. It's all about leather goods finishing,
Okay.
that often unseen artistry, that takes like raw hides and turns them into the luxury bags and shoes that, I mean, let's face it, we all kind of covet, right?
Absolutely.
And thankfully, RoleCatcher's career guide for leather goods finishing operators
Yeah.
is giving us that backstage pass, that behind the scenes intel that we need to really unpack this.
It is, yeah, it's funny how we picture like the designer labels and the red carpets, right?
Yeah.
But we rarely think about the meticulous hands that are ensuring like every stitch, every gleaming surface
Yeah.
on these products is absolutely perfect.
Right. It's like we just assume that those flawless finishes just magically appear. But this is a craft, like a deeply skilled profession. And the more I read from this guide, the more I'm realizing it is anything BT your average kind of factory job.
Yeah, absolutely. And the guide really stresses that it's about transformation,
Hmm.
not just buffing. They're ironing, creaming, oiling, waterproofing. They even use fire to achieve certain effects on these leather goods.
Wait, hold on. Fire? Okay, now that's a visual I was not expecting. This
Right.
is way more intricate than I imagined. What kind of fire are we talking about here? And what's the purpose of using that?
So it's incredible, actually, for a classic burnished effect on edges. They might use a controlled alcohol flame, and it allows for incredibly precise darkening and sealing, especially on like thicker, full-grain leathers.
Mhm.
So imagine achieving that rich antique look just by drawing out the natural oils and creating these subtle variations in color.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like alchemy, turning fire into this tool for enhancing the beauty of the leather. So it's not like a one technique fits all kind of deal, right? Different leathers, different challenges. What are some hurdles a leather goods finishing operator might encounter?
You've hit on a key point. The guide talks about corrected grain leather, for instance, can be really tricky.
Hmm.
Because it's been buffed and embossed for uniformity, those finishing treatments need to be spot on to avoid any inconsistencies sort of showing through.
That makes total sense. It's like a painter having to prime a canvas properly before their masterpiece can truly shine through. So for those of us who aren't like walking, talking dictionaries of leather terms, what exactly IS corrected grain leather?
That's a great question. It's essentially leather that's been sanded and stamped to create a more uniform surface. And it often makes up the more affordable leather goods as opposed to, full grain leather, which is the highest grade where you see all the natural markings and variations.
Ah, so that's why you sometimes see those subtle differences in texture on like a really high-end bag versus maybe something that's a little more mass-produced.
Exactly.
It's all in those details and the skill of the finisher to bring out the best in each material.
Yeah, precisely. And speaking of skill, this guide breaks down the career trajectory in a fascinating way. It's not just about staying in one lane. There's room for real growth and specialization.
All right, let's unpack this career path a little bit because I'm already picturing someone, starting with basic tasks, maybe assisting a master craftsperson, but then where do they go from there? What does that upward climb look like?
You're exactly right. The guide really does paint this vivid picture, of someone starting at that entry level,
Yeah.
maybe prepping the hides, doing some basic ironing, but always under the watchful eye of like a seasoned pro.
Right. So it's all about building those foundational skills,
Exactly.
consistency, understanding how the different leathers react to different treatments, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it
Wow.
sounds like those early days are so crucial for developing a feel for the craft.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's like building muscle memory, but for your hands and eyes.
Yeah.
The guide then talks about, the transition to that intermediate level where things get really interesting. This is where you're mastering those specific finishes, maybe tackling some minor repairs, even analyzing like technical specs to figure out the best work sequence for a particular piece.
Uh-huh. So they're not just like following orders anymore. They're actually starting to make judgment calls
Yeah.
that are really impactful to the final product.
Yeah.
And I bet that's incredibly rewarding to see your expertise come to life in such a tangible way in a beautifully finished piece.
You nailed it. It's a real shift, going from technician to artisan.
Yeah.
And speaking of artistry, the guide mentions how some operators even carve their own niche in this kind of intermediate phase. Maybe they become known for a specific finish,
Wow.
like a patina expert, someone who gives the leather that aged vintage look.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can totally picture that. Or someone who specializes in exotic skins like ostrich or crocodile. I mean, those materials probably require a whole other level of knowledge of finesse.
Precisely. And that expertise often translates into mentorship, right?
Mhm.
You're training the next generation. It's like this lineage of skill being passed down, ensuring that the craft stays alive it evolves.
That's beautiful. And with technology changing so rapidly, I imagine that those skills need constant updating. The guide mentioned new machinery and tools. What are some examples of those advancements?
Well, think about laser etching for like incredibly precise detailing,
Oh.
or 3D printing for creating custom molds and stamps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating how technology can both streamline production but also really push the boundaries of what's possible creatively.
It's true. It's like this ancient craft meeting the future head on. But even with all that tech, I'd imagine a keen eye and steady hands are still irreplaceable.
100%. The guide stresses that no machine can replicate the human touch,
Mhm.
that ability to assess, adapt, problem solve on the fly.
Right.
And that brings us to, a crucial point the guide emphasizes, the job interview.
Oh, right, right. Because it's one thing to have the skills,
Exactly.
but you need to be able to articulate them, showcase that passion to potential employers.
Yes.
So what kind of questions should someone who's, prepping for a leather goods finishing operator interview, what should they be ready for?
That's a great question. The guide highlights a few key themes.
Okay.
First, go beyond just listing your skills. Like really demonstrate your understanding of the nuances of different leather finishing techniques.
So instead of saying, I can do patina, give a specific example that shows that you understand the process.
Legal.
Like I've experimented with different solutions and application techniques to achieve a range of patina effects, from subtle aging to, more dramatic antiquing.
Now you're talking. You're not just following steps, you're thinking critically about the craft.
Yeah.
And the guide also emphasizes, the importance of highlighting your quality control process.
Of course, because precision is everything in this field, right?
Yes.
So instead of just saying, I'm detail-oriented, you want to say something like, I meticulously inspect every square inch of the leather,
Yes.
ensuring that all the stitching and the edges are flawless because I believe in delivering the highest quality craftsmanship.
There you go. Yeah, you're speaking their language now.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate the importance of showcasing your problem-solving skills. Employers want to know you can handle those, inevitable curveballs that come up.
For sure. So if they ask you about a time that you faced a challenge, you'd want to have a specific anecdote ready to go. Maybe a time you identified a flaw in the hide early on and how you salvaged it using your knowledge of leather and those finishing techniques.
Yes.
It's about showing initiative, resourcefulness.
Exactly. And this is where, passion really shines through.
Yeah.
Employers are drawn to candidates who are genuinely excited about the craft, who are eager to continue learning and growing.
It's contagious, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
That enthusiasm for honing your skills, for really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with leather.
Absolutely. And this ties back to the guide's emphasis on career development.
Yeah.
Right. Whether you're just starting out or you've been doing this for years, there's always something new to learn, new techniques to master, new trends to explore.
Speaking of trends, I'm really curious about the whole sustainability movement in fashion. It seems like every industry is trying to be more eco-friendly these days. So is that something that's impacting the world of leather goods finishing as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the guide actually touches on that a bit.
Okay.
Consumers are becoming so much more conscious about the environmental impact of what they buy.
Right. Right.
And that's really trickling down to how leather goods are made and how they're finished.
So what are some of the ways that you're seeing sustainability show up in the finishing process itself? I mean, are there more eco-friendly alternatives out there that are being used?
Yeah, you're on the right track.
Oh.
The guide mentions a real move towards vegetable tanning and natural dyes,
Okay.
which have a much lower environmental impact than, those traditional chrome tanning and synthetic dyes.
So instead of those harsh chemicals, we're talking about using plant-based extracts and pigments.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Are there any trade-offs, though, when it comes to those natural methods? Like, do they impact the durability or the look of the leather at all?
That's a great question, and it's something that the guide actually explores in detail.
Okay.
So while vegetable tanned leather might develop a patina a bit differently over time,
Right.
many argue that it actually ages even more beautifully,
Interesting.
gaining this unique character that you just wouldn't get with chrome tanned leather.
It's like the difference between, though, mass-produced furniture and a handcrafted antique. Like, those imperfections are all part of the story.
You've hit on a key point.
Yeah.
And the guide also talks about this rise of upcycling and repurposing in the industry,
Okay.
giving new life to vintage leather or using scraps that might have otherwise gone to waste, which is really cool.
That's fantastic. It speaks to that growing desire for, unique, sustainable pieces that have a story behind them, you know?
Yeah,
It's not just about the brand name anymore. It's about the values and the craftsmanship that are embodied in the product.
exactly. And for those entering the field, this focus on sustainability opens up a whole new realm of specialization.
Right.
Imagine, becoming known for your expertise in restoring vintage leather goods or for mastering those eco-friendly finishing techniques.
It's like a whole new chapter is being written in the world of leather goods finishing.
It really is.
You know, we often hear about automation replacing those skilled trades,
hmm
but this seems like a field where those hands-on skills, that human touch, will always be so incredibly invaluable.
I think you're absolutely right. The guide emphasizes that while technology can definitely enhance, the efficiency, the precision,
Right.
nothing can replace that trained eye of a skilled craftsperson.
Yeah.
Their ability to assess, adapt, and problem solve in real time.
It's that combination of artistry, experience, and intuition that really elevates a leather good from just a simple object to something truly, truly special. It makes you appreciate the story behind each piece, the hands that shaped and molded it to perfection.
Well said. And I think that's a powerful message to leave with our listeners today.
Yes.
Whether you're a seasoned collector or you're just starting to appreciate the craftsmanship of leather goods, take a moment to acknowledge those skilled individuals behind the pieces.
Yes.
Their dedication, their artistry, are what keeps this ancient craft alive and thriving in our very modern world.
Beautifully said. And who knows, maybe this deep dive has sparked a newfound curiosity in someone listening, inspiring them to see beyond just the surface and really appreciate the artistry woven into each stitch and every gleaming curve of their favorite leather goods.
I hope so.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of leather goods finishing.
Yep.
It's been a pleasure, as always. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.